All right. Good morning, class. Welcome, everybody, to Sociology. And today we're going to continue our discussion on deviance. And today we're going to look at a lot of different theories of deviance. Now, this being sociology, there's many different schools of thought. So these are all just different theories. And there's even many more than the ones you guys see in front of you. So I'm going to provide just a few theories and explanations today. I'm also putting up a little reading, a very short one for you guys that kind of lays out some of these different theories as well, if my lecture or slideshow doesn't quite get the point across enough. And we do want to make sure we're understanding some of these different theories because we're going to have an assignment that there are two assignments actually that deal with these different theories of deviance. One in regards to explanations for different behaviors, and then we're also going to analyze how does the media and our society talk about these different theories when we talk about different deviant activities. So we've got our big theories we've talked a lot about already in sociology, our functionalists, and functionalists say that everything that occurs in a society occurs for a reason. We have institutions for a reason, okay? And they're going to look at why, when there's a mismatch between the goals of society and what people can achieve, we do have some deviance, and that's called strain theory. Also look a little briefly at control theory. Who decides to deviate from the norm and why? Our symbolic interactionist, which is more looking at the micro level of society. But we're going to look at a couple of their theories, especially at labeling theory and differential theory. And we're going to keep in mind labeling theory as well next week when we talk about some of the stigmas that are associated with crime or other deviant behaviors. And then, of course, the conflict theory, our Marxist friends who view it as a struggle between different groups of people in power. You can understand probably already what they're going to use to explain some of their ideas of deviance. So I'm going to try to not to be very long-winded today because I do want you guys to have some time to work on your assignments. At any point in time during the class, if you want Ms. Penrose to pause the video or anything to ask a question, don't be afraid to do that. Okay, so let's look first at strain theory. And this is from our structural functionalist friends, okay? And they say deviance is more likely to occur when a gap exists between cultural goals and the ability to achieve those goals by legitimate means, okay? And let's take, for example, in the United States, we have a cultural goal of becoming wealthy. Then we have legitimate means you're supposed to follow in order to become wealthy. Generally, you go to school, you study hard, you get good grades, you go to a good college, get a good career, or open a business and become wealthy in that way. But what if for some reason you're unable or unwilling to follow the legitimate means for your cultural goals? Well, when you have the same cultural goal, but do not have legitimate means, this can lead to innovation. So an individual accepts the goal of success, but uses illegal means in order to achieve it. I want to be rich, but I don't want to go to school, or I wasn't, raised in a rich family. So selling drugs. I want to pass this class, but I don't want to study for it. I'll cheat on the test. And we often see, or almost always see, higher crime rates in low income communities who maybe don't have the paths in place or the role models in order to achieve success in traditional means, but maybe they have role models around them who do it in untraditional means. Okay. Now, if you are still going to conform to what society says legitimate, illegitimate, but you don't accept their goals. Maybe society says, your goal should be rich. Don't really care about that. Okay, I'm not going to try for that, but I'm still going to, work a regular job and things like that. Some examples of ritualism we'll look at more in a minute. The teacher doesn't care about their goal of engaging students, but they're still coming to work because that's what's expected of them. The parent who isn't really involved in the kid's life, but, they pay their child support or whatever because that's what's expected of them. Okay. Now, if you don't like the goals or the means, then you can do retreatism, giving up on life or on that society. And we can use extreme examples like hermits, people that just go live off in the woods by themselves. There was this crazy story from, I think, New Hampshire, where this guy lived alone in the woods for 21 years and would just break people's houses when he needed things and take them. Oftentimes, we also put in drug and alcohol addicts under retreatism because they're kind of escaping from the life as much as possible. And then if you reject success and the approved means of achieving it, but you want your own goals, okay, then you can rebel against society. We often see extreme political movements rise up this way. I don't think my goal is to be rich in life. My goal is for everyone to have healthcare. I don't see a way of doing that. I'm going to start a militia movement, okay? Or even some of these, ultra nationalist right-wing movements. We want to create a white ethnic state, but our society won't let us. We're going to go do our own thing off on the side. So this little tree hopefully will help you understand a little bit better this strain theory. If you accept society's goals, okay, let's say it's getting wealthy or getting married, okay, and you accept the means of doing it. I'm going to work hard and go to school. Then you are conforming. Congratulations. If you accept the goals of getting rich or success, but reject the clear path of doing them, then you innovate your own path, which some people find deviant usually. So these are illegal means of making money or other unethical ways of doing things. If you reject the cultural goals, but accept conformity, accept the way things are supposed to be, you just kind of go through the motions. We call that ritualism, okay? If you reject the goals and reject the means, okay, live on your own as a homeless person or you be a drug addict, that's retreatism. If you seek new goals through new means, that is rebellion. Okay. Now, the next part of the structural functionist theory is something called control theory. Compliance with social norms requires strong bonds between individuals and societies. Okay. Some people do not commit deviance because they have developed a strong social bond consisting of attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief in parents, school, and church. So pretty much what they're saying is that the less bonded you are to the community, the less likely you are to conform to their means and to their goals. Okay. And I think this is actually a huge issue today we should be talking more about. I think we mentioned earlier on in the year how come there's no more bowling leagues, but we do have a real problem with this. Of the social bonds in our society are probably not as strong as they were in the past. So the stronger your attachment is to a group or individual, the more likely you are to conform. If you go to the same church every Sunday and maybe Tuesday and Thursday for your whole life, you're probably going to do what the other people in the church do. If you're not attached to a group like that, why do you care as much? Okay. The greater your commitment to the social goals, the more likely you are to conform. So if you want to please people, you're committed to that. If you are involved in social activities, we mentioned church, sporting events, civics clubs, okay, anything like that, the more you are involved, the more or the less likely you are to be deviant. And if you believe in the norms and values of society, okay, and I think part of the thing that's going on in our society and around the world is kind of a crisis of faith in the values of society. So if you believe in the American way and freedom, of hard work, dedication, you think those things are true and cool, okay, the more likely you are going to conform to society. The stronger the social bond, the least likely someone is to be involved in deviant activities. The weaker the social bond, the easier it is for them to break and violate social norms. If you look at prison populations, it's a crazy number. Above 50% of the people in prison were raised in foster homes. And that usually means multiple different homes. So they obviously never had that strong social bond and commitment. So that means they were more likely to perform deviant activities. Okay. Now, our symbolic interactionist people, they care a lot about how we learn to do these things. So they're going to talk about social learning theories and kind of how deviance can be learned. So how is deviance learned? All behavior is learned through social interactions. And you often learn deviant behavior through Differential associations. Individuals learn deviance in proportion to the number of deviant acts they are exposed to. Okay. If your parents are very square, hardworking, never get in trouble or anything like that, and they watch you and your friends' parents are like that too, you're probably not going to get exposed to a lot of deviant activities. If you're raised in not as high a quality as home, or if your parents are criminals, you're probably going to see a lot more deviant activity. Okay. And parents, siblings, close friends, they are going to have a tremendous impact on your behavior. I'm sure some of you have had your parents tell you before, oh, you can't hang out with that person. Their parents are no good or something like that. And especially in this teenage years, it definitely has a big influence on who you are as a person. Okay. And if you get social gratification from committing deviant acts, you're more likely to keep doing them. And as a former middle school teacher, this is something I've seen and it's very frustrating. Okay. Oh, so-and-so is being rebellious. That gives them social points. That makes other people want to be rebellious like them as well. Okay. If you do something that is, a norm violation, but people like it, you're probably going to keep doing that. If your friends shun you for that, you're probably not going to want to do it again. And I remember my high school days where people would try to brag about the crazy things they did because they thought it gave them some social status. Okay. So this is just a breakdown a little bit more of that social learning theory. They say all criminal behavior is learned. Criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons in a process of communication. The principal part of learning of criminal behavior occurs within intimate personal groups. Okay. It's usually not watch something on TV and then you start doing that. Usually there's someone else in the neighborhood or a family member who shows you up close and personal. Hey, this is how you hotwire a car. Okay. Or this is how you use some sort of drug. Okay. And when the criminal behavior is learned, the learning includes usually the techniques of committing the crime, sometimes complicated, sometimes simple, and the specific direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes of those people committing the crimes. Okay. If you come from a family of weapons traffickers, there's a good chance you're going to learn how to traffic weapons. And I think this also plays into one of the issues we'll talk about more down the road with crime. How do we teach people to unlearn these behaviors? And is putting a bunch of criminals together in a very poorly supervised setting in which they can share information, is that the best idea? I know a lot of criminals say that prison is kind of like the university for criminals. We'll also talk more about labeling theory, okay, and stigmas that are associated with deviance. But this version of labeling theory says that society creates deviance by identifying particular members as deviant. Okay, so all these other theories, they help us understand why it occurs, but labeling theory goes more into why are some deviances considered worse than others. If two people are breaking the norm, why maybe is only one considered deviant? Or why are certain very specific behaviors considered deviant? Is a pregnant teenage girl deviant? If a middle-class youth is out, drinking or stealing a car, what happens to them versus a lower-class youth? Who gets tried as adults in this country? And also, what happens if we label kids early on as troublemaker, stupid, smart, or lazy? Okay. So deviance, there is a kind of primary deviance in which someone occasionally breaks the rules, but it's not necessarily a part of their lifestyle. Okay. Occasionally this norm has to go, but it's not something that's going to define you. And then secondary deviance, it kind of really does define who you are as a person. Okay. Your life and identity are organized around breaking society's norms. Okay. So if you're labeled as a criminal or a drug dealer or anything like that, that can stick with you and reassociate your life around it. And then the last little theory we'll look at today goes to our conflict theorists. Remember, this is originally Karl Marx, who was talking about how different groups have different forms of power, and they're in a constant competition between them. So the conflict theorists, they view deviance as rising when groups with power attempt to impose their norms and values on less powerful groups. Okay, we talk this way. Anyone who does not speak in the proper way is not as intelligent and deviant. We dress in this manner. Anyone who not dress like us is no good and a deviant person. And I was just looking at a heated local Facebook conversation, which was one of the bowling alleys had a rule about no sagging pants. Why? Okay. But that definitely goes into this about different groups and what is acceptable standards of behavior. Okay. And the powerful groups, of course, are going to attempt to prevent behavior that those in control see as threatening to their interests. And if we just look at all the voter laws that are getting passed right now, so lack of respect for authority or destruction of property are often very severely punished. And I think we've seen tons of examples of that from the previous year. And currently, right now, legislators around the country are trying to make laws that would criminalize protesting. Okay, that would make it, different protests a criminal offense. All right. If you do $500 worth of damage to a piece of property, that is a felony, and you can go to prison for that. However, we're well aware that power is not equally distributed. So the older, in this country, the white, but it depends on the country, men in general in this country. In this country, it's Christians and their religion. Those all are going to have different power dynamics than other groups. And they want to create rules that enforce and entrench their power. Okay. And they get to decide who and what are deviant in how they talk about people. And of course, there's so many different examples of this in our society. If you want to take the conflict theorist approach, why are the rich and poor treated differently? Okay. And when crimes happen to poor people, we often see victim discounting. They reduce the seriousness of the crimes that injure people of lower status. We can just look at, let's say, a poor Black teenager goes missing in this country versus a wealthy white woman in her 20s. What is the media attention? What is the police attention going to be on those different crimes as well? And if you look at the statistics about crime in this country, white collar crime, tax fraud, overtime violations, payroll violations, money laundering is much more detrimental to people than street crime. Okay, like breaking and entering, mugging, and things like that. Now, that street crime can be, of course, very frightening, and there's a violence associated with it often. But overtime and wage violations far outweigh any kind of money being stolen outright. And yet, white collar crime is treated very differently than street crime. Okay, and more people are injured in dangerous working conditions than they are murdered on the streets every year. Okay. So that's just a couple of different theories of deviance, and it's up to you guys to decide which ones you like, which ones you don't like. I gave you guys about 5 there. There's a bunch of other ones available as well. There's a feminist theory of deviance, although I don't think it works for every single situation, okay? But there's lots of other ones. I want you guys to pick 3 of them, and then you're going to apply them each to different deviant behavior. So I'm going to give you a Google Doc that's got all these different quote unquote deviant behaviors on them: stealing bread, drug addiction, gang warfare, embezzlement, manipulation. And you guys are going to have to answer, according to each theory, why does this occur? Okay, so you have to answer, for example, well, according to the conflict theory, according to the social strain theory, according to the differential learning theory, answer the questions like that. When you're finished answering these questions, I'm going to ask you guys to write at least a paragraph. Did answering these questions or thinking about this assignment change the way you think about these different situations? So just talk a little bit about that and what your feelings are. Okay. Tomorrow, we're probably going to have an assignment in which you guys will research some crime that has occurred in the recent times and look at how the media talks about it and how they label it with the different theories they have. If you guys have questions, please don't be afraid to reach out to Ms. Penrose or myself. And thank you all very much. I hope you guys have a great day.